Hello, everybody, and welcome again to my Wednesday words. Better late than never, but here's the video for this week. Today, I'd like to ask the question, where do I begin and end? Where do I begin and end? And this session is going to focus upon self-identity. Now, I've been reading about somebody called Daniel Steer, who is a photographer and a director. And Daniel published a photograph of two hands, one hand being a real hand, and there was a board in the middle, and the other hand being a fake hand. And Daniel worked out that if you stroke one hand, your brain gives you the sensation that the fake hand is actually genuine. Don't you think that's clever? And I wanted to talk about your sense of self, particularly in relation to how your mind is working. And how do you feel about your sense of self? In other words, who do you really think you are? A lot of the time, people that come to me at Adapt Counselling have lost that sense of self. They don't really even know who they are anymore. And this can be something that's happened to them recently, or something that's been around for them for many, many years. And very often, this relates back to childhood trauma. And as you know, these videos are not re-recorded in any way. They're not edited. And the reason for that is because I want them to be real and I want them to be genuine. So there are no cuts this video. I've made a few notes, and what I wanted to say to you is that it's quite common for us to not know who we really are, and to tell you that there is hope and that the counselling process can help with that. Counselling is a process, it's not static, and it changes. Therefore, when you come into counselling, the expectation, if you like, is that something will change. There's a transition, there's a transformation that takes place over a period of weeks. And very often, involved in that transformation is the discovery of self. Can you imagine that? It's almost as if we have a magic wand. But of course we don't. What it is, I believe, is quite often, as a counsellor, we're replacing the love that hasn't been experienced as a child. For many, many people, they haven't experienced that unconditional love and those bonds that need to be formed as children. And in a situation where we haven't experienced that unconditional love, how are we going to even begin to know who we are as adults? So where do you begin and where do you end? Do you actually know? It's a concept I struggle with myself at times, especially today. Today's been a somewhat difficult day for me personally. But this is not about me. It's about you and your self-identity. Many, many people feel unworthy. And it is so important to learn how to love yourself. And it is absolutely possible to do that, to believe in yourself, even at the point where nobody else does. We often look externally for validation to make us feel good about ourselves. Very often we look to please people because it makes us feel good. There's that motivation, that drive, that if we can get validation from somebody else, then we're worthy. But I ask you the question, why can't you feel worthy without that external validation? Without needing somebody else to validate your feelings, why can't you just feel worthy from the inside? No, I don't have all the answers, but I do know in my experience that is something to do with feeling unloved and therefore the inability to love ourselves. And that is so sad. And that is something that you can pick up with these beautiful hands, fake or real, and you can change. How wonderful is that possibility? As I spoke about in my video last week, in neural pathways, we can change the way we think, and therefore we can change the way we behave. And we can apply this to how we feel about ourselves. We can feel unworthy, but we can change that. In counselling, we call that reparenting. We can learn to give ourselves the love that we never had as a young child. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine what your whole life would have looked like had you had that love right from the get-go? Well, it is possible to change, to reparent the inner child, to provide the love that you never had and that you're seeking externally. And I thank you, Daniel Steer, for those beautiful hands and that wonderful picture. I wish I could show you it. Copyright doesn't allow me to do that. But you yourselves could look him up on the internet. He's taken some wonderful, perceptive photographs. And to provide the love that you're missing and to provide the answers of what you've been looking for many, many years, why not question whether counselling's the answer? And think about your self-identity. Think about if 0 was the worst and 10 was the best. Where would you be along that scale in how you feel about yourself? It is so, so important to do that. To know that you matter, you're valuable, and you're worth it. Those are my words of wisdom this week. I'd love to know your comments, and I will speak to you again next Wednesday. No procrastination today. Take care. Bye bye.